Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
My body burned hotter than ever as I watched both women experience waves of ecstasy. That night, I discovered reserves of stamina I didn't know I still had, feeling as vigorous as I did in my 20s. The excitement was electric, reminiscent of my first nights with Stephanie. We made love multiple times that night, each encounter bringing new discoveries and increasingly intense sensations as we explored each other's bodies with passionate curiosity. I'm Richard, 52, and my wife Stephanie is 48. As we celebrated our upcoming 25th wedding anniversary, we made a life-changing decision. After years in our spacious family home, we decided it was time to downsize to an apartment. The reason wasn't complicated. Our kids had flown the nest and were living independently, making the upkeep of our large house feel like more of a burden than a blessing. When Stephanie pointed out, with just the two of us here now, all this space is really more than we need, I felt that familiar pang of nostalgia. Deep down, though, I couldn't argue with her logic. Our sons were well into their careers, and the likelihood of them moving back home was pretty slim. Looking ahead to our future together, I realized a more manageable living space made perfect sense. We settled on a cozy two-bedroom apartment, not huge, but conveniently located near the metro station. The location turned out to be a real gem. It's amazing how much stuff you accumulate over the years. I chuckled, hefting another moving box, while Stephanie gave a knowing shrug. From old school projects to everything in between, we've really packed away quite a collection over the years. Time for a fresh start. I noticed how much Stephanie had evolved since our early married days. Back then, she was very sentimental about keeping things, always insisting everything held precious memories. But now, with the kids gone, she was really committed to decluttering, convinced we needed a clean slate for our next chapter. While I quietly admired her newfound resolve, I couldn't help feeling a touch of wistfulness. Still, I found myself getting excited about this new adventure. Though retirement isn't immediate on my horizon, it feels smart to get our living situation sorted well ahead of time. Our hopes were high for a peaceful new life. On moving day, the movers steadily filled our new home with boxes until they towered like small mountains. While the bigger pieces, beds, sofas, and such, found their spots quickly enough, we knew the smaller items would take time to organize. But I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked the place. From the way morning light streamed through the windows to having a supermarket just around the corner. "Han, could you grab this?" Stephanie called out while arranging the kitchen. Though we're still working out where everything belongs, the layout already feels more practical than our old place. Having everything within easy reach in a well-designed space means less running around. I'm determined to get the hang of things quickly so I can be more helpful. Those first few days were a whirlwind of unpacking and arranging. But once the dust settled, Stephanie's words touched my heart. "You know what? This feels just like when we were newlyweds. Just the two of us again." The comment took me back to before we had kids. Those were sweet times. Sure, we're firmly in middle age now, but with fewer responsibilities on our plate, we might actually have more time to enjoy life together. We started our new chapter with these optimistic thoughts. About a week after settling in, I was lying in bed one night, usually a quick trip to dreamland for me, but sleep wasn't coming easily. That's when I first heard it, voices floating through the wall. Initially, I dismissed it as someone's TV, but as I listened more carefully, I realized it was something more intimate, a couple's conversation punctuated by passionate sighs. This was new territory for us. I'd always heard that apartment living, even with concrete walls, meant occasionally overhearing neighbors, but I wasn't prepared for such clarity. The next morning, I brought it up with Stephanie. "I heard it too," she admitted. "Those were definitely the sounds of, you know, and not exactly quiet either." "Yeah, probably a young couple. Kind of awkward, isn't it?" Who would have thought we'd end up in this situation? Though embarrassing, there was something oddly exciting about it. Truth be told, hearing those sounds that night stirred up memories of our own passionate past. Back when Stephanie was in her 30s, we had our fair share of heated moments, sometimes struggling to keep quiet in our enthusiasm. When the kids were little, we had to be especially careful, but that didn't dampen our passion. However, as the years passed and our children moved out to start their own lives, our intimate relationship began to take a back seat. The combination of aging and work-related exhaustion led me to frequently postpone intimacy with excuses like, "I'm too tired tonight." Although Stephanie would show interest from time to time, we'd fallen into a rut, neither of us wanting to push too hard. That's why the passionate sounds from next door became an unexpected catalyst. They sparked something. That night, listening to our neighbors, I felt a spark of desire for Stephanie that I hadn't experienced in quite a while. That weekend, we reconnected intimately for the first time in months. It was as if the daily grind had buried our passion, and now it was finally resurfacing. The fresh start in our new home, combined with our neighbors' uninhibited romance, had reignited something special in our marriage. We found ourselves looking at each other with that same sparkle we'd had in our younger years. "We've been kind of ships passing in the night lately, haven't we?" Stephanie said with a contented smile after our intimate moment. Despite the exhaustion from moving, she seemed surprisingly energized. "Maybe I just needed to get back in shape," I joked sheepishly, wondering if she could guess just how much our neighbors' passionate sounds had motivated me. As we settled into apartment living, we began bumping into our neighbors more often. Whether it was by the elevator or at the trash bins, we'd exchange quick hellos, nothing major, but it was a start. Then one day, while waiting for the elevator in the lobby, we met the couple from next door. They looked ready to head out somewhere. The man appeared to be in his late 30s, the woman in her mid-30s. They looked put together even in casual clothes. "Hi there. You must be our new neighbors," the man said warmly. "Yes, we just moved in this month. I'm Richard, and this is my wife, Stephanie. I'm James, and this is my wife, Emily. Great to meet you." So these were our passionate neighbors. My heart skipped a beat. Emily, in her mid-30s, radiated vibrant energy. Her perfectly styled brown hair, bright eyes, and frequent smiles made her naturally attractive. Though not tall, she had an enviable figure, slim-waisted with graceful curves, and dressed with understated elegance. When she smiled, her dimples gave her an almost youthful charm. I couldn't help but picture them in their intimate moments, their silhouettes intertwined. Whenever I heard their voices now, my mind would wander to their passionate encounters, filling me with a mix of embarrassment and intrigue. I found myself wondering about their daily life. It felt surreal having such a normal conversation while knowing such intimate details about their life. But we kept things cordial, exchanging the usual pleasantries and "let us know if you need anything." As we parted ways, I had no idea this chance meeting would lead to such unexpected developments. After putting faces to the voices, their nighttime activities became even more vivid in my mind. Now I could clearly picture them. "Oh, that's James and Emily. There they go again," Stephanie whispered as we lay in bed, our faces close. The sounds and subtle vibrations left little to the imagination. But rather than being annoying, it had become a sort of aphrodisiac for us, actually improving our own love life. "Sounds like the neighbors are feeling romantic tonight," Stephanie would say, and I'd respond with a knowing "yeah" as we began to touch each other. It's a bit embarrassing to admit, but being in our 50s, it had been years since we'd been this actively intimate. Though we both felt a little shy about it, we were enjoying this renewed passion. Their enthusiasm had awakened something in us, making us feel decades younger. One weekend, while taking a walk around the complex, we ran into James and Emily coming back from Walmart with shopping bags. As we exchanged greetings, Emily warmly suggested, "Would you like to come over for coffee?" Since we'd been hoping to have a proper conversation with them, We happily accepted. Though they lived right next door, this would be our first time in each other's homes. Their apartment had the same layout as ours, but somehow felt more spacious. Maybe it was their modern furniture arrangement? Make yourselves at home. Coffee or iced tea? Emily asked with a welcoming smile as she headed to the kitchen. Stephanie followed, offering to help. James and I stayed in the living room, both of us a bit unsure how to break the ice. James leaned forward with genuine interest. So, I hear your kids have all moved out? I sipped my coffee, smiling warmly at the thought of our children. Yeah, they've both graduated college, landed good jobs, and are living independently now. James and Emily exchanged knowing glances, and he smiled. We're still child-free, both caught up in our careers, just enjoying life as a couple. His tone carried a genuine contentment. James's face lit up as Emily added softly, "It means we can splurge a bit more on traveling and our hobbies." They were clearly doing well for themselves. Back in the day, Stephanie and I used to be quite the adventurous pair too. But once the kids came along, our priorities naturally shifted. Those days feel like a lifetime ago now. As we continued chatting over coffee, their personalities really shone through. James had this thoughtful, laid-back vibe, while Emily's easygoing nature made everyone feel right at home. Before we knew it, Stephanie and I found ourselves completely at ease, and an hour flew by like minutes. You know, this is the first time we've really had a chance to properly chat, Stephanie ventured. How about coming over to our place for dinner sometime? James and Emily's faces lit up with genuine enthusiasm. We'd love to. And just like that, we locked in a date before wrapping up our get-together. I never expected we'd click so well with our neighbors, but there was something exciting about the prospect of couples socializing. When the evening rolled around, James and Emily showed up right on time. "Thanks for having us," Emily said, taking in our living room with appreciative eyes. "Your place has such a peaceful vibe." I quickly set up some drinks, wine and beer, and James didn't hesitate to grab a cold one, cheerfully announcing, "Now this is what I'm talking about." Stephanie had outdone herself with dinner. Nothing fancy, just good home cooking. I'd pitched in here and there, but she definitely had the magic touch when it came to seasoning. Her years of experience were evident in every move she made. While I played sous chef, she was clearly in her element, mentioning how much she enjoyed cooking for guests. "This is incredible," James praised, clearly impressed. Emily chimed in with a modest smile. "I can barely boil water. I wish I could cook half as well as you, Stephanie." After we raised our glasses in a toast, the conversation really started flowing. We bounced from topic to topic, work stories, daily life, shared interests, you name it. At one point, it hit me. Just a month ago, we were total strangers, and now here we were, sharing dinner and stories like old friends. Maybe there's something about apartment living that just brings people together naturally. As the evening progressed with flowing drinks, between the beer, wine, and whiskey, we were all feeling pretty loose and happy. That's when the conversation took an interesting turn. Emily, slightly flushed from the drinks, gave a playful smile and dropped a bombshell. "You know, about these apartments, the walls aren't exactly soundproof." Stephanie and I exchanged awkward glances, caught off guard. "Yeah, we figured the concrete would block more sound, but..." James let the thought trail off. The alcohol gave me a bit of liquid courage, and I decided to be honest. We were definitely surprised at first by what we could hear through the walls. Emily and James both blushed noticeably. "Oh gosh, can you really hear us?" Stephanie asked with an apologetic smile. They quickly responded, "Hey, we should be the ones apologizing. We're in the same boat here." By now, everyone knew exactly what we were dancing around. Those passionate nighttime sounds. Emily looked down sheepishly. "We try to keep it down at first," James added with an embarrassed grin. "Well, without kids around, we got a bit uninhibited. Sorry if we've been disruptive." I shook my head and, emboldened by the drinks, decided to go for complete honesty. Actually, it's been kind of inspiring for us. Truth be told, our own love life has picked up lately. So, thanks for that, I guess. The alcohol had definitely loosened my tongue. The words tumbled out before I could catch them, and sure enough, Stephanie playfully smacked my arm while blushing. But rather than killing the mood, my confession only heightened the atmosphere. Emily's eyes danced with intrigue as she leaned forward. So, hearing us really turned you on? James wore a shy grin, and while Stephanie looked embarrassed, she didn't contradict anything. As we became more relaxed from the wine, our conversation as four adults ventured into uncharted territory. Emily hesitated before speaking. This might sound crazy, but since you enjoy hearing us, would you maybe want to watch in person? God, that sounds so weird, doesn't it? The room fell dead silent. I was completely stunned. I never expected that kind of proposition, but there was something captivating in Emily's gaze. Glancing at James, he seemed taken aback but not opposed. Then Stephanie spoke with surprising steadiness. Watch, you mean you and James together? Emily nodded. I know it's totally unconventional, but I'm curious, and maybe you'd both enjoy letting us watch you too. The wine had definitely lowered our inhibitions, but strangely, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. The scene was already playing out in my mind, awakening feelings I'd never experienced before. While part of me questioned if this was appropriate, I couldn't deny the overwhelming curiosity and excitement building inside. Looking at Stephanie, I could see her face reflected a similar internal struggle, confusion mixed with undeniable interest. There was a moment of hesitation. Surely this wasn't really happening. I couldn't deny my interest, though. Just as I was about to speak, James broke his silence. What if we took it even further, like swapping partners? The words hung heavy in the air. The words partner swapping kept ringing in my ears. While it seemed completely outlandish in normal life, something you only read about online or in magazines, doing this with our neighbors should have been unthinkable. Yet somehow, none of us could just laugh it off as impossible. Instead, there was this electric tension in the room, like we were all fighting to contain something powerful. Though we ended the conversation with nervous laughter and, "That's too wild," I lay awake that night. Here we were, me in my 50s, Stephanie at 48, while James and Emily were 38 and 34 respectively, all still young enough to have active desires. My mind kept wandering to what it might be like if we actually swapped partners. How would James be with Stephanie? How would Emily and I connect? I felt both guilty and excited at the same time. The next morning, as Stephanie unusually busied herself making breakfast, she broached the subject. Richard, about last night? Which part? The partner swapping conversation? I never thought we'd have a discussion like that. I debated whether to share my true feelings. Though it might hurt her, I felt honesty was the best policy. Choosing my words carefully, I opened up. It caught me off guard too. It's not something we'd normally consider, but honestly, I'm kind of intrigued. I'm sorry. To my surprise, Stephanie met my confession with a smile. Me too. I was shocked at first and thought it was completely wrong, but my heart was racing the whole time. Swapping partners is typically taboo. Why were we seriously entertaining the idea? Objectively, it seemed crazy. But truthfully, our long-term relationship had fallen into a bit of a routine these past few years. Our bedroom activities had already gotten more exciting thanks to our neighbor's influence. Maybe this was the natural next step to spice things up even more. A few days later, as Stephanie and I were relaxing in front of the TV one weekend evening, our doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood James and Emily. "Hope we're not interrupting," Emily said softly. "There's something we'd like to discuss." There was a palpable tension in their demeanor as they made their way to our living room. They brought out wine and glasses from their bag. This wasn't going to be just another casual drink. The atmosphere felt heavier, more purposeful. We all knew what was on our minds, even if no one wanted to be the first to bring it up. As we settled onto the sofa and poured the wine, we raised our glasses quietly, the conversation stilted. After a few sips, Emily finally broke the ice. "I've been thinking about our conversation the other night," she admitted, her cheeks slightly flushed. "James and I have talked it over, and, well, we're interested in exploring that possibility. But there's absolutely no pressure. We completely understand if you're not comfortable with it." My heart skipped a beat. James leaned forward, his expression serious. "Look, we know this isn't exactly normal neighbor territory," he said carefully. "But if we're going to try something like this, we'd want it to be with people we trust. If you're not into it, we can pretend this conversation never happened." I found myself looking at Stephanie, searching her face. She took a deep breath before speaking. "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious," she admitted softly. "But I'm also nervous about what it might mean." What followed was one of the most honest conversations I've ever had. Four adults carefully laying their cards on the table, sharing our thoughts and feelings openly. Though we remained fully clothed, our emotions were completely exposed. After thorough discussion, we agreed to a one-time experiment with clear ground rules. We'd stop immediately if anyone felt uncomfortable. With everything settled, we parted ways as the night grew late. 1 week later, the moment arrived. We'd chosen our bedroom as the setting and agreed to keep the drinking minimal. We all wanted to be clear-headed for this. "Maybe we should go over the ground rules one more time?" James suggested quietly. "Just once. We stop if anyone's uncomfortable, and above all, we treat each other with respect." I nodded in agreement. Both Stephanie and Emily wore serious expressions, but there was a sense of determination in their eyes. My heart was racing a mile a minute. Are we really doing this? I wondered. But we'd made our decision. If anyone wanted to back out, now was the time. Despite my nervousness, I could feel an undeniable excitement building. Part of me wished we'd had more to drink, just to take the edge off. The room felt charged with tension, the dim lighting casting soft shadows. The gentle illumination created an intimate atmosphere. "You okay?" I whispered to Stephanie. She bit her lip nervously before answering with a slight tremor in her voice. "Yes?" Then Emily's gaze found mine, her eyes reflecting a mix of uncertainty and desire. "Take care of me, Richard," she whispered. We gradually moved closer to our new partners, me with Emily, Stephanie with James. The initial awkwardness was overwhelming, but when Emily's hand brushed against my back, it sent electric shivers through my entire body. As I felt her warm breath against my skin, my throat tightened with anticipation. Emily and I shared our first kiss, an intense attraction flowing between us as we explored unfamiliar territory. The sensation of her breath mingling with mine, the warmth of her body against me, it was wonderfully different from anything I'd known before. Her lips were impossibly soft, her perfume intoxicating, making my pulse quicken. When our eyes met and we exchanged gentle smiles, every trace of uncertainty melted away. As my hands found their way to her waist, her smooth skin sent tingles through my fingertips. Emily's sweet scent filled my senses while her breathing grew heavy with anticipation. Her figure was even more stunning than I'd imagined, her curves and softness captivating me completely. Our breathing fell into a shared rhythm as passion built between us. From nearby came sounds I'd never heard from Stephanie before. Watching her with James sparked an unexpected cocktail of emotions, a twinge of jealousy mixed with an intense rush of arousal. She wore expressions I'd never witnessed in all our years together. Emily's youthful energy was magnetic. Her firm body and animated responses ignited something primal in me. It was a completely different kind of attraction than what I shared with Stephanie, which made everything feel even more extraordinary. Every so often I'd steal a glance at Stephanie, and seeing her display this newfound boldness with James sent conflicting waves of jealousy and arousal through me. The passionate sounds we used to hear through the walls were now live and in living color, our fantasies made flesh. All four of us were completely lost in the moment, our earlier nervousness forgotten entirely. My body burned hotter than ever as I watched both women experience waves of ecstasy. That night, I discovered reserves of stamina I didn't know I still had, feeling as vigorous as I did in my 20s. The excitement was electric, reminiscent of my first nights with Stephanie. We made love multiple times that night, each encounter bringing new discoveries and increasingly intense sensations as we explored each other's bodies with passionate curiosity. This experience would be forever etched in my memory. The thrill of touching a new body, watching our partners with others, that intoxicating blend of jealousy and arousal. We all discovered new dimensions of pleasure that special night. Afterward, we lay there catching our breath, utterly spent but feeling strangely liberated and deeply satisfied. As dawn approached, James and Emily quietly thanked us and took their leave. I watched their silhouettes fade down the dark hallway before closing the door with a heavy sigh. Though completely exhausted, it was a satisfying kind of fatigue. Back in the bedroom, Stephanie sat perched on the bed's edge, giving me a knowing smile. "That was incredible," she said softly. "I know. Never thought we'd do anything like this," I replied, grinning. The next day, we were both physically and emotionally drained. Luckily, it was a holiday, so we went about our usual household routines. As we took care of everyday tasks like tidying up and doing laundry, there was this surreal feeling lingering in the back of our minds, as if the previous night had been some kind of vivid dream. Later, while waiting for the elevator to head out for groceries, Emily suddenly appeared. We both froze for an awkward moment, but despite her initial embarrassment, she managed a warm smile. "Thanks for last night." "You too." The brief exchange meant so much more, our shared secret hanging in the air between us. But being mature adults, we tried to handle it gracefully and move forward naturally. In the weeks that followed, our relationship with James and Emily stayed surprisingly normal. Sure, there was some initial awkwardness, but we still exchanged friendly hellos and casual chit-chat in the lobby like any other neighbors. We'd all agreed it would be a one-time thing, and we stuck to that promise. Sometimes the thought of another encounter crosses our minds, but it's precisely because we maintain that boundary that we've kept things normal between us. These days, when we hear those familiar sounds through the wall at night, we don't get flustered anymore. Instead, we just share a knowing smile and think, "Sounds like they're enjoying themselves." And when Stephanie gives me that suggestive look and whispers, "Should we?" I can't help but grin and say, "Let's make some noise of our own."